Angelica Spurb.
Hello and welcome to episode 93 of Spurbs Herbs. Today's herb is going to be Zhi Mu, Anemarrhena Rhizoma, or Anemarrhena Rhizome. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, there we go. Okay, today's episode. In this episode, we will be exploring another interesting and common Chinese herb, Zhi Mu, Anemarrhena Rhizoma, or Anemarrhena Rhizome. This herb is in the Chinese medical subcategory of herbs that are the draining fire category under the category of herbs that clear heat. It is commonly used herb for cooling heat while also generating yin and fluids to moisten dryness. And as usual, we will be exploring something a little different. In this case, we'll be discussing another Chinese herbal legend about our herb. Please join us for this journey to the center of herby goodness. Before we get into that, just want to tell you about an amazing deal that we're doing. We are starting an amazing special for our courses. If you use them for continuing education, professional development activities, or just for your own edification, we are offering 50 hours of courses for an unbelievable price. Unbelievable. Normally, this would cost $750. However, with the special code 50 CEUs, this is going, that's the number 5 is the 50 CEUS. This is going to be only $325, not $3, $325, or only $6.50 per hour. Plus, on top of that, in addition to, you can get a free signed copy of one of my books, just pay for shipping and handling. This is a free copy of Integrative Pharmacology, Combining Modern Pharmacology with Integrative Medicine. That is a $75 book for free. Or Playing the Game, a step-by-step approach to accepting insurance as an acupuncturist. And that's not a $75 book, but it's still a good book. I think it's $30 or $35 book. So it's still a good book. Either of those for free, whatever you want to do. And all you need to do is go to the webpage, www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's Integrative Medicine Council, COUNCIL.org/CEUs1. That's CEUS1, the number 1 for this amazing deal. So let's do an herbal legend. So this is from Chinese Herbal Legends, 50 Stories for Understanding Chinese Herbs. I love this little book. I got it. I was teaching at the school, and the representative from this book company came out, and he had this small little book. I can, for those of you online, I can show it to you. A small little book. It has 50 herbs, which you think would be a lot, but I've only come across it out of 93 episodes. I think I've only used it 5 to 10 times. So it's important herbs, but not all the important herbs. Great little book. I love it. And it just adds a nice little spark to the herbs. So I'm going to read one of the herbal legends that is in there about this herb, Zhi Mu. Let me get into my voices mode here. Long, long ago, there was an old woman who had no children. She had gathered medicinal herbs since she was young, but because she always gave them to people without charging, she had not saved money. When she was old and weak and could no longer climb the mountain to gather medicinal herbs, she had to beg from village to village. She worried all day, not because of her bitter life, but because she could not pass on her skills of recognizing medicinal herbs. And once she died, who else could gather herbal medicine for the people? So the old woman was determined to look for an honest man to whom to pass on her skills. She said to all she met, "Whoever takes me as his mother, I will tell him how to recognize medicinal herbs." The son of a rich family heard this and thought, "If I could cure disease, won't it be another way to fawn on high officials?" Therefore, he invited the old woman to join his family. "Old lady, I am willing to be your son. Please tell me what medicinal herbs can cure disease," he said. The The old woman gave the rich son a quick look and asked, "Why are you in such a hurry? First, I will see how you treat me." The rich son had the old woman live in a good house and gave her new clothes and served her good food. But after 10 days, when the rich son saw that the old woman didn't speak of medicinal herbs, he could no longer restrain himself. "Mother, you should tell me how to recognize medicinal herbs." "It's still too early." "How long must I wait?" "About 10 years." "What?" The rich son was angry. "I have to provide you with food for 10 years? Humph! Go away and don't cheat me any longer." Sneering, the old woman put her original clothes back on and unhurriedly left the rich son's home. Again, she begged and shouted on the street as before. One day, a merchant heard her. As he thought that he could make a lot of money by selling medicine, he called to the old woman at once. "I'm willing to take you as my mother," he said. So then the old woman lived in the merchant's house. After the merchant had served her for 1 month, he could no longer keep calm. "Can you really recognize herbal medicine?" he asked. "Certainly." "Please teach me how to do it." "It's not yet the proper time." "How long should I wait?" "Until I die." "Oh!" The merchant shook all over with anger. "You devil woman, do you think I'm a monkey? Return to begging." "It's you who invited me." "Humph! I was blind." Apparently, I like that word, humph. After the old woman was driven out of the merchant's house, she went on begging and groaning. "Whoever takes me as his mother, I will tell him how to recognize medicinal herbs," she muttered. Days passed. People thought she was mad, and no one spoke to her. One winter, when the old woman had arrived in a small village, she fell down before a gate. The master of this family was a boatman, and he helped the old woman into his house. "Old lady, what is wrong with you? Are you hurt? Are you ill?" he asked. "No, I'm not ill. I'm hungry." Immediately, the boatman asked his wife to cook a pot of soup and brought it to her. "We have no good food at home. Please have this while it's hot." After the old woman ate, she began to feel warm and wanted to go. "Where are you going on such a cold day?" asked the boatman and his wife. "Oh," the old woman heaved a deep sigh. "I am so poor that I have to beg." On hearing this, both the boatman and his wife felt sympathy for her. "You are so old, and it's not easy for you to beg. You don't mind our poverties. Please stay with us," they told her. The old woman didn't refuse, and she stayed. Time flew. Spring came, and the flowers began to blossom. "How can I always eat food in your house? Please let me go on," said the old woman. "You have no children, and we have no parents. Isn't it a good thing that we live together as a family?" asked the boatman. "To tell you the truth, previously I gathered medicinal herbs. I knew many kinds which could cure diseases and save people's lives. I had wanted to adopt a son so I could pass on my skills. But now I am too old and muddled to recognize any of those herbs. Now you are taking care of me, but I have no way to repay you," said the old woman. "We are all poor people. I don't need to be repaid. As long as we have food to eat, you won't be hungry. Please don't go out begging," said the boatman. "All right, I will take this place as my home and you as my son." From that time on, the boatman and his wife regarded the old woman as their own mother. The old woman helped them take care of the children and to do some housework. They loved the old woman too. Because she didn't want the old woman to be too hot or too cold, the boatman's wife wouldn't let her start fires in June nor wash clothes in December. The old woman lived there comfortably for 3 years. When summer came that third year, she was already 80 years old. "My son, I want to climb up the mountain to look around," she said one day. "Mother, you are too old. You will get tired." "I feel bored, so I want to have a look at the mountain scenery." "Let me carry you there on my back." When the boatman carried the old woman up the mountain on his back, sometimes she wanted to go east and then west, up the slope and down the valley. The boatman became very tired and he sweated a lot. But instead of getting upset, he joked to make her happy. When they came to a slope where wild grass was growing, the old woman asked the boatman to stop. She got down, sat on a stone, and pointed at a bundle of grass with striped leaves and white flowers with purple stripes. Go dig it up, she said. The boatman went there and dug at it until a yellowish brown root appeared. Mother, what is this? He asked. This is a medicinal herb. Its root can cure lung heat, coughing, consumption, fever, and so on. It's very useful. My son, I think you know why I didn't teach you how to recognize it before. After thinking a while, the boatman said, you must have wanted to find an honest man to whom you could pass on your skills. You were afraid that if a bad man learned them, he would only make a pile of money and cheat people. I have searched for such a man for many years, but found no one. My son, you really understand what I think. So I named this medicinal herb Zhi Mu, for knowing one's mother, said the old woman with a smile. Then she taught the boatman to recognize many other medicinal herbs. He began to gather them, and he always remembered her words and cured poor people's diseases as the old woman had done. And that is the herbal legend around Zhi Mu. And with that amuse-bouche, let's discuss our herb proper. So today we're going to be talking about Zhi Mu. So Zhi Mu, again, my Chinese, I've had several years of Chinese, but it's not my pronunciation isn't the best, so please forgive me. In Latin, it's Anemarrhena Rhizoma, and then it's just Anemarrhena Rhizome. There's not a bunch of difference between the common name and the Latin name. It's from the family Liliaceae. Standard species is Anemarrhena asphyloides BGE period. So BGE, again, remember, refers to the biologist who first classified it. The medicinal part is the rhizome. Remember, the rhizome are the parts coming off of the root, the sort of strangling parts coming off the root. In English, it means know about mother. That's what Zhi Mu stands for. Li Shizhen, who's a very famous herbalist, says alongside the main root, the accessory roots have the appearance of insect larvae crawling toward their mother. Larvae are called chur, and this gradually became jur, hence Zhi Mu, about mother. So that's where the words come from, where the name comes from. I love it when they give an explanation of where the name of these come from. Other names, there's lots of other Chinese names. Mao Zhi Mu, Guan Zhi Mu, Zhi Mu Ro, Yan Zhi Mu, Lian Mu, Swan Bianzi Sao, Chi Mu or ant egg mother, Ye Liao wild water weed, Di Shen earth ginseng, Shui Shen water ginseng, Shui Jun water dredger, Huo Mu goods matrix, and Ti Mu cicada mother. And in Japanese, it's Churmo, and in Korean, it's Jimo. And I don't pronounce Japanese or Korean, so that's just my best stab at them. So let's talk about that Liliaceae family just for a bit before we get in more into the herb. This is the lily family and contains about 15 genera and 610 species of flowering plants. These include lilies and tulips. Common characteristics include large flowers with parts arranged in threes, with 6 colored or patterned petaloid tepals. Tepal is one of the outer points of the flower. The term is used when these parts cannot be classified as either sepals or petals. So that is a petaloid tepal. Undifferentiated petals and sepals arranged in 2 whorls, that's swirls, 6 stamens, and a superior ovary. Most species are grown from bulbs, although some have rhizomes, and many Liliaceae are important ornamental plants. All 3 of our texts agree on the dosage of 6 to 12 grams per day. That's unusual that they perfectly agree. Chen Chen does add there is a maximum of 30 grams per dose. So all of them say 6 to 12 is a normal dose, and Chen Chen says maximum 30. Category Bensky and his team puts this herb in the subcategory of herbs that drain fire under the category of herbs that clear heat. So that is the two. There's the category and the subcategory. Chen say it is in the heat clearing and fire purging herbs subcategory under the heat clearing herbs category. And Brown and Wiseman say it is a heat clearing, fire draining medicinal under the heat clearing medicinals category. I don't think there's any real differences between these three classifications, other than some translational issues. But other than that, they're all saying pretty much the same thing. All three of our texts say it is bitter, sweet, and cold, and enters the lung, stomach, and kidney channels. And I just have a note here. This level of agreement between our texts is quite rare. I mean, it's unusual, especially with older, this is an older herb, and especially with older herbs, there's usually some different streams of thought that go along with it. But in this case, all three of our texts are in complete alignment. Both Bensky and his team at Chen say the original source for this herb is the Shendan Bencao Jing, or the Divine Husbandman's Classic of Materia Medica in the 2nd century CE. So this, if you're not familiar with the Shendan Bencao Jing, that is the oldest book on single herbs in Chinese history that we have. There may be older books, but we don't have them intact. This is relatively intact. And so when an herb is in the Shendan Bencao Jing, it usually means it's amongst, it is the oldest of the herbs in Chinese medicine. So what about this subcategory, or this overall category of herbs that clear heat? Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about the subcategory of the drain fire in just a minute. So according to Bensky et al., heat in traditional Chinese medicine refers not only to febrile disorders or problems attributable to the invasion of pathogenic heat, but also to any condition that presents with heat signs: dry throat, red face, red eyes, dry stools, dark and scanty urine, yellow tongue coating, rapid pulse, and a sensation of warmth in the 5 centers, which include the soles of the feet, palms of the hand, and the sternum. Heat can be found in either the exterior or the interior. Exterior heat presents with fever, chills, headache, thirst, moderate sweating, and a floating rapid pulse. Interior heat presents with fever without chills, dry mouth, thirst, irritability, scanty and dark urine, yellow tongue coating, constipation or diarrhea, and abdominal distension. The herbs described in this category are used for treating interior heat. In general, these herbs are cold in nature. Makes sense. So that's the overall category of clear heat. Let's talk about the subcategory of drain fire, herbs that drain fire. So Bensky et al. Continues to discuss the subcategory of herbs that drain fire. Herbs that drain fire are among the coldest in the Materia Medica. They're used for treating high fever, irritability, thirst, and delirium associated with febrile disease. In the 4-level Sifun system of differentiation, these symptoms generally correspond to the Qi level, and in the 6th-stage Liu Jing system, to the Yang brightness stage. Included in this group are herbs used for treating eye problems due to wind heat, as well as heat in the liver, lungs, or stomach. All right, so that's an overview of the categories involved. Let's talk about good quality Zhi Mu. So Bensky et al. Says good quality consists of large rhizomes with a compact and soft texture. The cross-section is yellowish white with a slightly greenish tinge. Later, under the heading of additional product information, they say the best quality is said to come from the Xiling region of Hebei province. In the past, the only form of this herb on the market was the unpeeled product known as hairy Anemarrhena, or Mao Zhi Mu. Recently, however, the form that has been peeled before drying is preferred in China. It is known as naked Anemarrhena, or Guang Zhi Mu, or Anemarrhena flesh Zhi Mu roe. Because this is a relatively less stable and is readily affected by humidity, which changes its color, it is not the preferred product for export. Chinese medicinal identification and illustrated approach says Zhi Mu are long strips, slightly curved, slightly flat, occasionally branched. Externally yellowish brown to brown, with a hard and easily broken texture, a faint odor, and a slightly sweet and a bit bitter taste, which is sticky when chewed. Superior medicinal material is large, fat, and hard, with a yellowish white fractured surface. Notable features include the gold-wrapped head, or Jin Bao To, refers to Mao Zhi Mu or hairy Zhi Mu, with the outer skin intact, which has remnants of light yellow leaf scars and stem scars at the apex. Other features include an indented groove on one side and densely arranged ring-like nodes with dense and yellowish brown colored remnants of leaf bases on the nodes. The other side bulges out and is slightly wrinkled with indented or protruding spot-shaped scars. Let's talk about Chinese medical actions. So according to Bensky and his team, Zhi Mu clears heat and drains fire for high fever, irritability, thirst, and a rapid flooding pulse in patterns of heat from excess in the lungs and stomach. Also for cough due to heat in the lungs with expectoration of thick yellow sputum. It enriches the yin and moistens dryness for exhaustion or deficiency of lung and kidney yin with such heat signs as night sweats, steaming bone disorder, irritability, afternoon or low-grade fevers, heat in the five centers, and bleeding gums. Also for such kidney heat signs as spermatorrhea, nocturnal emissions, and abnormally elevated sex drive. It generates fluids and clears heat for oral ulcers and inflammation due to yin deficiency, and for wasting and thirsting disorder. Wasting and thirsting disorder is usually Chinese medicine will attribute that to like diabetes. And finally, it ameliorates the dryness of tonifying or warming substances. For circumstances when tonifying herbs such as the Stragoli radix or Huang Qi, or warming herbs such as Cinnamomum ramulus, Grey Jur, and Aconites radix lateralis preparata, Jur Fudza, are used, but there is concern that they not be too drying. Chen and Chen say it clears heat and sedates fire, nourishes yin and moistens dryness, nourishes yin and clears deficiency fire, generates fluids and quenches thirst, and neutralizes unwanted effects of warm herbs. Brand and Wiseman say it clears heat and drains fire, and enriches yin and moistens dryness. Chinese Medicinal Identification Illustrated Approach says it clears heat, drains fire, engenders fluids, and moistens dryness. And the Divine Farmers Materia Medica says it is non-toxic, mainly treating wasting thirst and heat in the center. It eliminates evil qi in the treatment of puffy swelling of the limbs, precipitates water, supplements insufficiency, and boosts the qi. Preparations. Bensky et al. Discusses nomenclature and several preparations for this herb. A variety of names are used to emphasize certain desirable qualities in this herb, such as fat Anemarrhena, Fei Zhi Mu, because the best quality herb is big, fat, and moist. Unprepared Anemarrhena has a powerful fire draining action, so is often used for conditions of heat from excess in the lung and stomach, with a high fever and restlessness, thirst, and a large tidal pulse. It is appropriate in such formulas as white tiger decoction or bai tong, which is a classic decoction. Okay, so different types. We have dry fried Anemarrhena or Chao Zhi Mu. The herb is dry fried over a medium flame until slightly browned. The heavy, bitter, cooling qualities of Anemarrhena readily injure the stomach and intestines and cause diarrhea. Frying reduces its cooling nature and moderates its fire draining effect. Some fry it with wheat chaff to protect the digestion, especially for those patients with both fire from deficiency and spleen and stomach deficiency. Honey prepared Anemarrhena or Mi Zhi Mu. Honey prepared Anemarrhena Rhizoma Zhi Mu aims to protect the spleen and stomach by moderating its bitter, draining, and cooling nature while adding sweetness to tonify the middle. This form is best for those with damaged fluids and blood, or those who are too weak to take strong, bitter, cooling herbs. Salt-fried Anemarrhena, or Yan Chao Zhi Mu. Slices of the herb are briefly dry fried, then sprayed with salt water, then dry fried again or baked until dry. The saltiness promotes its affinity for the kidneys and increases its downward directing action. Thus, salt-fried Anemarrhena nourishes the yin, moistens dryness, and cools and drains ministerial fire. Vinegar fried Anemarrhena or Su Chow Zhi Mu. Slices of Anemarrhena which have been soaked in vinegar are dry fried or baked until slightly brown, which focuses the herb's actions on the lungs. Origins of Medicine, the book Origins of Medicine, and it looks like I need to. Origins of Medicine, or the Yi Shui Qi Yuan, which was written in the Yuan dynasty, which ran from 1271 to 1368 CE, notes, to raise to the head or to lead into its channels, prepare with vinegar. The Anemarrhena then cools lung metal and drains fire. For example, e.g., when lurking heat in the lungs causes symptoms such as coughing or spitting up of blood, nosebleeds, irritability from deficiency, cough, and wheezing. Wine fried Anemarrhena or Jiao Chow Zhi Mu. Slices of the herb are soaked in rice wine, then dry fried or baked until somewhat browned. This has the effect of guiding the herb's actions upward and lessens its cold draining qualities. Western uses. It appears this herb is primarily a Chinese herb. The PDR for herbal medicines does have an entry for this herb, but it emphasizes its Chinese function, saying in China, Zhi Mu is used for febrile conditions and inflammation, diabetes, dry cough, bone fever, quote unquote bone fever, and general dehydration and painful stool or stranguria. Stranguria is, we often will call it stranguary. It's basically trouble urinating and can include urinary stones and things along those lines. There's also a decoction for typhus, scarlet fever, and tuberculosis. So, and that's the whole thing that it talks about. So really, it really is emphasizing the Chinese aspects of this herb. What this tells us is the fact that this is a primarily Chinese herb. It's an important Chinese herb. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be in the PDR for herbal medicines. The PDR for herbal medicines does not have a ton of Chinese herbs. It does have some major Chinese herbs, but that's about it. So this makes it a pretty major Chinese herb. And the fact that it doesn't really have a lot of Western uses indicates that it's primarily Chinese in origin and use. Okay, so let's talk about commentary on this. Bensky et al. As usual, has an excellent commentary on this herb. Quote, bittersweet, cold, and moistening, Anemarrhena Rhizoma, or Zhi Mu, primarily acts through the lung, stomach, and kidney channels. Bitter and cold, it drains fire, while its sweet, cold, and moistening qualities enrich the yin and moisten what is dry. This clearing and moistening quality is the principal advantage of Zhi Mu. In the upper burner, it clears lung heat. In the middle burner, it cools the stomach. And in the lower burner, it drains ministerial fire while also enriching the yin of the kidneys, lungs, and stomach. Therefore, it can be used in situations of both excess and deficiency when heat has dried the yin fluids, such as wasting and thirsting disorder. The Divine Husbandman's Classic Materia Medica. That's the Bensal. Oh man, I totally blanked on it, and I have it right here, and I can't read the Chinese. It's Shendong Bensao Jing. There we go. I got it. Shendong Bensao Jing. It explains that Zhi Mu governs wasting and thirsting, heat in the middle, expels pathogenic qi, and by driving water downward, treats floating edema of the limbs. It tonifies insufficiency and benefits the qi. And in parentheses, it says he in the middle refers to stomach yin deficiency. The pathogenic qi that Zhi Mu expels is pathogenic heat that has entered the body, particularly at the yang brightness stage. This herb drives water downward because its cold, moistening qualities drain the spleen. The Grand Materia Medica, which is an important book, the Bensao Gongmu, written in 1590, explains why Zhi Mu can act on both the lungs and on the kidneys. When the kidneys suffer dryness, acrid substances should be imbibed to moisten them. When the lungs suffer rebellion, upward, bitter substances should be imbibed to drain them. Zhi Mu is acrid, bitter, and cold, so that below it moistens kidney dryness and enriches yin. Above, it clears lung metal and drains fire. It acts at the qi level of both channels. To lead into the channel above, fry with wine, then bake it dry. To move it downward, soak in salt water, then bake. That refers to some of the preparations we just mentioned. In an interesting further comment, Li Zhishen notes that astragalus huang qi acts at the blood level of the kidneys, which is why the two herbs should be used together. Zhang Shichun points out that Zhi Mu is not intrinsically extremely cold, nor is it very bitter. He tasted and compared Zhi Mu with an equal amount of astragalus huang qi and found little perceptible difference in temperature sensations. Then he boiled Zhi Mu and Glycericerae radix gansao, or licorice, together and found the result to be mainly sweet. Thus, we know that Zhi Mu is neither extremely cold nor extremely bitter. However, it does have copious fluid with which to enrich yin. Some say that Zhi Mu can only cool heat and is unable to enrich yin. This is viewing Zhi Mu too superficially. When I treat conditions of heat from excess with a rapid pulse, I always use Zhi Mu. Formulas which use astragalus radix huang qi to tonify qi can be too hot for some patients. Use Zhi Mu as a supporting herb. Its fluids, however, lubricate the intestines, and so it should not be used if the stools are loose. Chen and Chen also have some commentary on this herb. Depending on the other herbs with which it is combined, Zhi Mu has dual functions to clear excess or deficiency heat. It is used often because it nourishes fluids and clears heat simultaneously. Furthermore, Zhi Mu is often preferred over yin tonics, which are hard to digest and may cause dampness if not prescribed carefully. All right, let's talk about some combinations. Bensky et al. Combines this herb with three others. First of these is Coptis rhizoma or huanglian. Both of these herbs are bitter and cold, and both clear stomach heat and direct fire downward. However, Coptis rhizoma huanglian is drying by nature, and while good for eliminating dampness, it readily harms the yin. On the other hand, Zhi Mu is moistening and nourishes the yin while cooling heat. Together, they act strongly to clear stomach heat and direct fire downward, while concurrently drying dampness without harming the normal yin fluids. This pair is most often used for symptoms of blazing stomach fire, such as voracious hunger, continual thirst, dry stools, a dry yellow tongue coating, and a slippery, rapid pulse. Jottings from Repeated Celebration Hall, or Chongqing Tong Sui Bi, written in 1810, a text passed down through the family of the celebrated Wang Meng Ying, which focuses on the implications of yin deficiency, notes that great predominance of stomach heat will cause the yin to be insufficient in harmonizing the yang. Fluids, both yin and yang, will dry, leading to a parched inability to break down foods. This pair can reduce the predominance of stomach heat and prevent further injury to the stomach fluids. Another combination is with Gypsum fibrosum or Shirgao. Gypsum fibrosum Shirgao is acrid, sweet, and very cooling. It can vent muscle layer heat and cool stomach fire. And while its heaviness directs fire downward, its acrid flavor allows it to reach the exterior. Thus, it addresses both the interior and exterior of the body. Zhi Mu is bitter and cold. Its bitterness directs fire downward, while its moistening quality resolves dryness. Together, they have a powerful ability to cool heat in the yang brightness stomach while protecting the stomach fluids that this heat would injure. The associated symptoms are high fever, profuse sweating, insatiable thirst, large and strong pulse, red face, and aversion to heat. At this time, with the pathogenic heat widely spread throughout the body, not concentrated in the intestines. Treatment which attempts to clear heat through the intestines will not be effective, nor will the use of bitter cooling herbs such as Coptis rhizoma huanglian or Scutellaria radix huangqin, which will further damage the fluids. The best approach is to use acrid cold flavors combined with bitter cold moistening qualities. Gypsum fibrosum Shurgao and Zhi Mu are ideal for this purpose, combining to release heat and eliminate irritability, as in white tiger decoction Bai Hu Tong. So that's the second time we've heard this Bai Hu Tong being brought up, and it is an important herbal formula, which at some point, if I haven't done it already, we'll talk about. Chen and Chen have some interesting comments about the combination with gypsum fibrosum Shurgao. Zhi Mu and Shurgao gypsum fibrosum are often used synergistically to sedate fire and prevent the loss of yin. Sweet and cold, Zhi Mu clears heat, generates fluids, and moistens dryness. It clears heat in all three jiaos. Those are the three burners. We've talked about those in the past. Clearing lung heat in the upper jiao, sedating stomach fire in the middle jiao, and clearing deficiency fire of the kidney in the lower jiao. Very cold and thermal nature, Shurgao enters the qi energy level and is best in clearing excess heat in the lung and stomach. It is the herb of choice when clearing heat from the qi level, manifesting in symptoms of high fever, extreme thirst with preference for cold drinks, profuse sweating, and a forceful, rapid pulse. Together, Zhi Mu and Shurgao sedate fire without draining yin. And finally, our third combination is Sauco fructus or Sao Guo. The acrid flavor of Sauco fructus Sao Guo has a floating, dispersing quality, while its nature is warm and strongly drying. Zhi Mu is bitter and cold. It is best at cooling heat and draining fire. Sauco fructus Sao Guo can scour away phlegm dampness, awaken the spleen yang, and overcome the yin-natured accumulation of turbid dampness. Zhi Mu treats clumped heat, drains stomach fire, and alleviates the irritability associated with heat from constrained pathogens in the interior. Each of these herbs contributes opposite qualities to a combination which regulates cold and heat, harmonizes the exterior and interior, and is thus ideal for treating malarial disorders when the pathology includes greater yin turbid dampness fuming upward with irritability, heat, and profuse sweating. As explained in the Grand Materia Medica, Sauco fructus Sao Guo and Zhi Mu used together treat miasmic malarial disorder with chills and fever. As there's one yin herb and one yang herb, there is no problem of imbalance. For Sauco fructus Sao Guo treats the cold that would occur if just greater yin prevailed, while Zhi Mu treats the fire that would occur if just yang brightness prevailed. So it's a great combination. We see this a lot, by the way, in certain combinations, opposites. So the ultimate effect is regulatory, that it's a really great way to combine herbs. And that's our combinations. Let's step into comparisons of this herb with other herbs. And actually, Bensky only combines this with one other herb, which we've just mentioned, which is Gypsum fibrosum Shurgao. So the Shurgao, you can see that the combination of Shurgao and Zhi Mu is a very important combination. And even though it wasn't one of the combinations that we talked about, Zhi Mu and Huangqi is also an important combination, but it wasn't brought up in the combinations that I talked about, but it was brought up elsewhere, so it's still an important combination. So comparisons. So let's compare this herb with Shurgao. Both medicinals cool the lungs and stomach, and both clear heat from the yang brightness qi level. This pair is therefore appropriate for treating the irritability, thirst, and fever in the large, strong pulse that characterize this condition. They are often combined in the treatment of lung and stomach heat, leading to such symptoms as thirst or cough. There are, however, significant differences between them. Zhi Mu primarily clears heat and moistens, and besides cooling the lungs, also cools the kidneys and nourishes the yin. Owing to its acrid flavor, gypsum fibrosum or Shirgao primarily clears heat and disperses, which extends its effect to the exterior. Its heavy property enables it to reach the interior. Gypsum fibrosum Shirgao protects the fluids by draining fire, while Zhi Mu benefits the yin by directly generating fluids. So this is sort of, again, combination, but this is a combination of likes. You know, we have combinations of kind of opposites, and here we have combinations of similar herbs that are doing similar things to really amp up the effects that it's trying to go for. Contents. According to Bensky and his team, the main constituents of Zhi Mu are saponines, flavonoids, lignanes, polysaccharides, alkaloids, and organic acids. Chen discuss a few specific. By the way, Bensky goes into a lot of specifics under these categories, so I didn't get into them because we're doing that elsewhere as well. Chen discuss a few specific components: timosaponin, magifrin, sarsaponid, sarsapagenin, all right, marcagenin. I refuse to not put these in. I'm going to try and get through each of these every time. Neogidoginin, Anemarrhenae A, B, C, D. So whenever you see one of the chemicals that seems similar to the Latin name, as in this case, Anemarrhenae, indicates it's probably pretty exclusively in this particular herb. Liu et al., their team, which is a review article, says 269 compounds have been identified from Anemarrhena asphodaloides, including steroidal saponins, flavonoids, phenylpropanoids, alkaloids, steroids, organic acids, polysaccharides, benzophenones, and other ingredients. So, in other words, as most of herbs, lots of stuff. So let's talk about the science behind this. So according to Chen, the pharmacological effects of Zhi Mu include being anti-diabetic, antipyretic, antibiotic, anti-neoplastic, and cholagogic. Remember, cholagogic induces the flow of bile. We mentioned that earlier. Again, most of these were not in humans, but what's nice about Chen's book is they also talk about clinical trials. So here's they discussed two positive clinical studies. One discussed the use of a formula containing Zhi Mu in treating prostatic hypertrophy with an N equals 80. So 80 subjects. So again, we want at least 30 to 40 subjects in a study, because then that allows us to apply population statistics to it. Anything less than that, we cannot make any determinations on a population based on that study. And above that, we can start to do that. N equals 80 is still relatively small, but is definitely statistically valid. And the other using a different formula containing Zhi Mu to treat acute rheumatism. This one had an N of 56. Again, the reason why I keep emphasizing these N's is not just this statistical attitude to it, but it also is a determination of the power of the study, how strong the study is. So it's important to know how many people, how many subjects there were in a given study. So these were both statistically valid. What I don't like about them is it's not about Zhi Mu, it's about the formula that Zhi Mu was part of. And so take it with a grain of salt. We know that Zhi Mu is useful, but this doesn't tell us individually how useful Zhi Mu is. But then again, in Chinese medicine, we use most of our herbs in formulas. And so, the formulas become useful to look at as well. Liu et al. Says studies have shown that the extracts and compounds from Anemarrhena asphodaloides have extensive pharmacological activity, such as nervous system activity, anti-tumor, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic, anti-osteoporotic, anti-allergic, anti-platelet aggregation, antimicrobial, antiviral, anti-aging, hair growth promoting, and preventing cell damage, etc. So lots of different stuff, according to that one particular paper. Another review by Wong et al. From 2014 says crude extracts and pure compounds from Anemarrhena asphyloides exhibited significant pharmacological effects on the nervous system and the blood system. They also showed valuable bioactivities such as anti-tumor, antioxidation, antimicrobial, antivirus, anti-inflammation, anti-osteoporosis, anti-skin aging and damage, as well as other activities. So notice both of these last two were review articles. I tend to prefer review articles. Review articles, especially meta reviews, are going to be much stronger evidence on a given herb than individual trials will be. So I don't try not to get in these episodes, try not to get bogged down in a lot of trials. I'd rather look at review articles. Both of these were not the strongest review articles. They were not meta-analyses or actually systematic reviews, but it did give us some overviews of Zhi Mu. So let's talk about drug-herb interactions here. So Chen and Chen say it is prudent to, and Chen and Chen, by the way, you should know one of there's a brother and sister, John Chen and Tina Chen. John Chen is a pharmacologist by training, as well as he has a Chinese medical background as well. I think he has a master's. I don't know if he's gotten his doctorate in acupuncture medicine or not. I wouldn't be surprised if he has. But he's a pharmacologist, so he knows his stuff when it comes to these drug-herb interactions. So Chen Chen say it is prudent to use Zhi Mu with caution, with insulin, sulfonylureas, and other anti-diabetic medications. Though no interaction has been documented, the combination of anti-diabetic herbs and drugs may have a synergistic effect leading to hypoglycemia. So this is what we call an expert opinion. It does not have when you look at evidence-based medicine, it is lowest level of evidence. It's level D evidence. So take it with a grain of salt. When it comes to expert opinions, and I definitely consider Dr. Chen an expert in this field. When it comes to expert opinions, it just means there's no evidence behind it. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. It's not very important to pay attention to. But as far as evidence-based medicine levels are concerned, it's the lowest level of evidence, that in animal research, because it's not in humans, and bench research, because again, it's not in humans, are the lowest level of evidence. So take it with a grain of salt, something to be aware of, but until I see more evidence, I'm not sure I'm super worried about this drug-herb interaction. A literature search did find some potential interactions between constituents of and formulas containing Zhi Mu and various cytochrome P450 isozymes or P-glycoprotein. The cytochrome P450 and P-glycoproteins are what we use as risk factors for drug-herb interactions. So any interactions with either of those are going to increase the risk of a drug-herb interaction. But none of these were clinical or specific to the whole herb. So when you're looking at formulas, is it just because a formula caused an interaction doesn't mean that Zhi Mu or anything to do with Zhi Mu was the reason why there was an interaction. So I don't consider that evidence of an interaction between Zhi Mu and drugs, cytochrome P450 or P-glycoprotein. And then looking at the constituents of Zhi Mu, I hate looking at that and going, okay, here's a drug-herb interaction when you're looking at constituents of herbs, because when you look at an individual constituent alone versus the overall herb, in an herb, there may be constituents that do increase in interaction with a specific cytochrome P450, but there may be another constituent that decreases a chance of interaction with the cytochrome P450. And then when they're doing research on a specific target, specific constituent, they're usually looking at quantities of that individual that component that you would never get if you were using the herb properly as a whole. And so I don't consider interactions with constituents to be of a huge risk for the herb overall. So really what I want to see are studies that look at the herb and then determine the whole herb, all the constituents. It can be an extract of that herb, it's just concentrated constituents, but it has to have all the constituents of that herb. and then see if there's any interactions between these. And there was no evidence that I found that showed that for Zhi Mu. Okay. And that, my assessment that there isn't a whole bunch of worry here on drug-herb interactions, which, by the way, is what that book we were talking about earlier, the integrative pharmacology book, talks about a lot. So I'm definitely up there in the expert category. And when it comes to drug-herb interactions on this stuff, I'm not particularly worried about Zhi Mu and drug-herb interactions. And to back that up, the American Herbal Product Association's Botanical Safety Handbook, which is an excellent resource, says this herb is interaction class A, herbs for which no clinically relevant interactions are expected. And that's where I would sit absolutely with this particular herb and the research I've done on it. Okay. Let's talk about some concerns about this herb. Bensky and his team note several concerns with Zhi Mu. Under the heading of cautions and contraindications, they say contraindicated in cases of cold from deficiency of the spleen and stomach or diarrhea. Under the heading of traditional contraindications, they say a passage in Harm and Benefit in the Materia Medica, the Ben Sao Hai Li, written in 1893, observes Zhi Mu injures the stomach and lubricates the intestines, giving people diarrhea. It is forbidden for anyone with disorders such as impotence, coupled with quick arousal and quick ejaculation, weak spleen, inability to digest food, stomach deficiency with no thought of eating, or kidney deficiency, diarrhea. This passage goes on to quote Shu Wei, who reminds us that Zhi Mu is bitter and cold and thus shares the qualities of autumn and winter, which are inappropriate for long-term tonification. Yet people ignore these aspects and focus on its ability to enrich the yin. So this is not an herb that should be used to enrich yin long-term. It's more, I think of it more to protect yin as you're draining fire more than anything else. It protects more than enriches. Chen and Chen have some concerns as well. Cold in nature, Zhi Mu is contraindicated in patients with diarrhea, spleen or stomach deficiencies, or kidney deficiency. Brandon Wiseman warns, because Zhi Mu is a cold, moistening substance that lubricates the intestines, it is inappropriate for patterns of spleen vacuity with sloppy stool. And this is interesting. The American Herbal Products Association's Botanical Safety Handbook says this is in safety class 2D, states other specific use restrictions as noted. And the book discusses two issues: a contraindication for people with diarrhea and a concern about glucose regulation and combining with diabetic drugs, which we've just mentioned about both of those. So I think that's well covered. And that does it for today's herb. Today we started with our discussion. We started our discussion with another Chinese herbal legend. Then we looked at another single Chinese herb, Zhi Mu, Anemarrhena Rhizoma or Anemarrhena Rhizome. This herb is in the Chinese medical subcategory of herbs that drain fire. It is an interesting, important herb for treating heat and yin deficiency, and it appears to be quite safe with the possible exception of patients with diabetes or diarrhea. With that, we conclude another exploration into the gooey center of a very useful Chinese herb. In 2 weeks, we will be looking at another Chinese herbal formula, Ren Shen Bai Du San. Let me get those tone marks correct. Ren Shen Bai Du San, or ginseng powder to overcome pathogenic influences. It is under the subcategory of formulas that release the exterior disorders with interior deficiency and is useful for treating external attacks or colds with underlying deficiency. We will be doing our deep dive into this formula. And as usual, we will look at something a little different. Please join us as we don our spacesuits, do a spacewalk, and enter the unexplored space of medicinal herbs in our next exciting episode. Thank you very much. Appreciate you listening to another one of our episodes. If you like this podcast, please do us a huge favor. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And don't forget that amazing continuing education deal at www.integrativemedicinecouncil, .org/CEUS1, CEUs 1, the number 1. You can always get in touch with me at Dr. Greg at spurbsherbs.com or at our website, www.spurbsherbs.com. And I just want to say, we just put up all our episodes up to date on YouTube. So you can look for Spurbs Herbs on YouTube and you can have access to all of them. Right now, there's no videos with them. They just have a standard sort of background video. It's all auditory, but we are in the process of getting our videos up on each of these as well. So that'll be coming up in the next few months probably. So as we get that in. So we have them all up on YouTube. So you can take a look at them. Thank you. Okay. And as usual, we have bibliography. These tend to be a little bit shorter because I have a lot of information in my textbooks. So a little bit shorter bibliography than usual. There we go. Thank you very much.
Spurbs Herbs.
The proceeding was presented by Dr. Greg Sperber. We would like to thank Janelle for all her support and everybody else who contributed to this program.
Timothy Dobbins,
Rogers,
Campbell.